And we are live. All right. No music today. So this is not a Book of Experts podcast or interview episode, which is normally how I'm used to going live. I'm not used to just jumping on and talking. Usually we have some intro music and all that. Right now it is just me. I'm expecting Kat. I think she'll be joining us shortly. She was running a bit late. But I wanted to get us started. Today is kind of a big day because we're talking about the successful Kickstarter that we ran in April and May. It finished in May. A bunch of you guys know that because you supported us. You were the reason it was a successful Kickstarter. And so as one of our stretch goals, our promises to you guys, we said that we would do a mini workshop, a live stream, a something that we put together and talk about what we learned, why we did the Kickstarter. And actually, Kat's just joining me now, so let me bring her on. Hey there, girl. Welcome aboard. Can you hear me? Kat, can you hear me? No. So it looks like she's getting her audio lined up. I'll wait and take her off for a second. Let's deal with these technical difficulties. Just sending her a note. So we're going to do the workshop. Here's the deal. We are actually live streaming through several different channels right now. Several of them are public, open to the public. For example, my LinkedIn profile. So we're getting this out to more people that way. But if you want the information and the good stuff, not only this broadcast, but actually the one that so we've done two so far. We did an earlier broadcast where we talked about the perfect tool for your conversational outreach. Welcome, by the way, Kat. So it looks like you can hear me now. I had you on earlier, but I don't think you were getting the audio.
Sorry,
I put you up on the screen, but I don't think you could hear us yet. So we're just gathering the group here. I was explaining that we're live streaming in public, but if you want the replay of this or you want the good stuff, make sure you get into the Experts Never Chase Facebook, the pop-up group that we created, the book club, because this resource will stay in there and a bunch of other ones that we've created for you guys. What do you need to be part of the book club? Just buy the book and be part, just like if you're not feeling like you want to spend a lot of money, it's still 99 cents on Kindle. Like, it's not going to break the bank. You want a hard copy, you want one of these for your desk. I love having books that I can actually pull off my shelf and reference. If you want one of those, it's a little more expensive there. But, get the 99-cent copy, join us in the book club. We've got some active discussions. Jayle, I see you. I saw your question today, by the way. Apologies. It looks like you asked a few days ago, and for some reason I didn't see that notification. But I got you, girl. We've got answers for you. I shared one resource already and have more coming. But basically what we're doing with the book club is giving folks a chance to read through the material, see what questions they have, answer, like do some Q&A back and forth, and go get a client before you finish the last pages of the book. It's not a big book, but if you actually take action on the steps, you can start conversing with people, and you might even find yourself backing your way into a sale with reverse gear. Maybe. So, Kat, sorry, I've kind of been holding court here while we're getting started. Any thoughts before we get into today's topic?
No, I think that you kind of covered everything, and just, take it from the authors who are just a little biased, but I think this is something that we both wish we had years ago, that could have saved us a bunch of time, energy, and a lot of money if we had access to something like this.
I totally would. If I found this book from somebody else, I totally would have bought this. There's no doubt in my mind. And that sounds like, like I'm blowing smoke up our own butts or whatever. But truthfully, the information was not easy to find. And we both paid a lot of money to go work with world-class experts in this space. And I think we've put ourselves in that group as well because of what we put together, and the best of what we do is in the book. So,
yeah, agree.
So for today, hi Diana, I see you jumped in the comments as well. So for today, we're talking about Kickstarter. This is actually part of the stretch goal that we did as the Kickstarter campaign to promote the book launch. And as a thank you to our supporters, one of the things that we said, we're going to do several sort of bonus workshops. One of them being, what's the deal with this Kickstarter thing? Why did you do it? How did you do it? What was the whole, what did you learn from this experience? Like we promised sort of a peek behind the scenes. And I've got some good stuff. I've been putting some notes together. I told Kat earlier today that I had 8 different sections that I was going to be sharing. I actually have it down to 3, Kat. I've broken this down into 3 big groupings. There's a bunch of subpoints underneath it that people will be interested to hear, but 3 big things that I want to share with you guys about what we learned from doing Kickstarter. And I know Kat's got some great information as well on one of the most important of the points. So I say let's get into it.
Yeah. So let's give credit where credit is due in terms of the brainchild of this strategy and, tactic, if you will. So one of the things that I don't know if everyone knows about you, Tobin, is you have a penchant of being able to solve problems in a unique way. So a lot of times people tend to solve problems. It tends to be the same modality, right? They go kind of back to the same well, whereas you're able to really go and say, you know what? What's a different way of looking at this? And what is a mechanism to solve a problem or achieve a result without doing it the way that everybody else does, which is the mind of how a marketer should think, right? Because what is marketing but getting someone's attention? And what gets someone's attention but then successfully funding a Kickstarter to fund a book that was already written? So how did you come up with this concept of leveraging this and doing it successfully? Because I know that a lot of people go to Kickstarter, maybe they even had the idea, but they don't actually, fully fund it. Because I know you like to share, which is if it's 99% funded, all the money goes back. So there's the concept and then there's the fruition of the concept.
Yeah, so you brought up some interesting things there. I want to start from big picture, and then we'll kind of get specific about Kickstarter itself. But the big picture, I think the most important thing that I heard you say is the part about attention. I think I'm saying this from my own personal experience, and some of you are going to resonate with this and say, "Yeah, I'm totally with you on this one." We live in an attention economy. Like currents, the money of the realm, the coin of the realm is our attention that we give to things. There is abundance. If you sort of just look around in the world, look at what's happening. There are nicer homes, nicer cars, nicer everything. Like we live in a pretty abundant world. If you're fortunate enough to at least be, in a Western society, or I be the first person to admit I'm very privileged. The education that I received, where I've been fortunate to live and grow up, and I see an awful lot of opportunity and abundance around us. So the one thing that is a non-renewable resource is attention. Like you've only got so much of it, and so your family, your children are going to get a big chunk of that. Like the things that you care about are going to get a big chunk. So when you start slicing and dicing what's left over, there's not a lot that you can give to books and resources and coaches and mentors. Like you can't give it to everybody. So I think from a marketing perspective, this is always on my mind. What is unique here? What is different? What is going to stand out? If you try to do the exact same thing as everybody else, you're in the middle of the crowd and everyone is shouting and screaming and no one can hear you. So I think the Kickstarter was, I've always wanted to do one, but it was a really interesting mechanism to explore and learn something from. That's also something I try to do with a lot of my projects is what can I learn from this? But do it in a unique way. Create a story. Like, why were we doing this? You said yourself, the book was already written. Why did we didn't have to do the Kickstarter to get the book written. It was to build a community of people with awareness and attention on what we were doing so that they could participate in this with us. And that's really, I think, we'll get into the mechanics of how Kickstarters work in a minute, but the big idea here is they can get on the train with you. The train's leaving the station, you invite them to join you, and they get to participate in unique ways with a Kickstarter.
So I know you're probably going to get into this, and maybe I'm just jumping the gun on this one, but you came up with the idea. You said so. Actually, let me go ask a different question. What was the thing about the Kickstarter? Because it's not just set it and then hit, put a buy button. You actually had strategy behind what you were offering as in terms of an experience for people who invested at different levels. How did you come up with those concepts, and what did you leverage as inspiration to be able to do that?
So I'm going to answer your question in the form of a image, a metaphor for everyone to think about, because I've been processing ever since the Kickstarter ended in May. I've been thinking a lot about what we experienced and what I learned from it and what others can benefit from too. I suspect this won't be the only Kickstarter I will do. We'll definitely go back, and we definitely made some mistakes and learned some things from the first experience that I'll do differently in the future. So the picture, the image that I want you to think about is, and I should have grabbed a screenshot of this so you guys could see it, but just imagine an iceberg, right? Think of the prototypical iceberg, any picture that you've ever seen, and there's a little tip. The top of the iceberg is up above the water. You have the water line, and then you have everything underneath the water, and it's usually the much more significant weighty part. Is that's why they say the tip of the iceberg. You only see the topmost portion, but the mass of the weight is underneath the water. There you go. Right. There's our high-tech drawing of the iceberg. So what I brought for you today is the three parts are: we're going to talk about what you see above the water, we're going to talk about the water line, and we're going to talk about what's under the water. Okay, so the first one that I want to share with you is, and we kind of mentioned this already, but different is better. It's not only better; it's essential, I think. Otherwise, you're just running in the crowd with everyone else. But the other thing, the part about getting on the train, there's an actual psychological, what would they call it? Psychological effect, I guess it would be, called the IKEA effect. And that is when people bring home those flat boxes of IKEA furniture and they spend several hours struggling to put it together. And I know this, our whole apartment,
We know this
a year ago
firsthand.
and it's all IKEA furniture. So I put everything, assembled it all. What they've found is that people appreciate and value that furniture more highly than if they had just gone to the store, it was pre-assembled and it was delivered to their apartment. Like the perceived value of that piece becomes greater when we invest ourselves and invest our attention into something. And so that's one of the things that you can do with Kickstarter if this fits your other goals. It's not the only reason to do a Kickstarter, but it's one of the big things is that people will invest in the process with you. They become part of the journey. They want to see you reach your goals. They want to see you reach the stretch goals every bit as much as, so they buy in. And the terms that I used when we were hitting our goals and going beyond it was, this has been like a old-fashioned barn raising. When communities would come together and one family needed the barn for their farm to operate, and they weren't going to be able to erect those trusses, that are 30, 40 feet in the air. You just can't do that as a family. Even if you've got a big family, it required the whole community to sort of come out and do this to make an event out of it. And that's what a Kickstarter campaign is like. It's an old-fashioned barn raising around a creative project that you're excited about and others can get excited about as well. Yeah. So a couple things on the mechanics of it that I think are really important here, and then we'll talk about sort of how we set, because your question was part of it was, how did we set up our campaign? How was it different and unique? But you mentioned Kickstarters are all or nothing propositions. Most Kickstarters are not just taking pledges of support, but they're actually taking orders. So in our case, it was the delivery of the book or the delivery of a book plus. We had several plus packages. So you hit 99% of goal, they're going to refund all those orders. They're going to go back. They hold the money on the credit card, but they don't collect it if you don't hit goal. So that's really important to know up front, and not every crowdfunding site works that way. I think if you go to Indigo, which is another, or Indiegogo, or I can't remember how you say
Yeah,
it.
Indiegogo. Yeah.
Yeah, there's another one that does not require the all or nothing approach, but Kickstarter does. And it's one of the reasons it's kind of like high stakes. Like, people get excited, and it drives that behavior as well because they want to see it happen. The other thing that's interesting is that when you this was maybe counterintuitive. I hadn't experienced this, at least. When you tip, which is the term they use when you hit your goal, when you go from 99% to 100%, you've tipped, which means you're actually successfully funded your project. The momentum picks up at that point. So you would think that all the momentum would be to get to goal, and then it would sort of slack off. People would say, "Oh, you did it, great! You're on
You
your
don't need me. You don't need my money. You're good."
yeah, but it's actually just the opposite. That the hard lifting is getting through the 30, 40, 50% range, that middle. The first few supporters, when you first launch it, you might get to the first 10%, fairly easily, because it's new. You're sharing something exciting and new, and people are like, "Oh, cool."
Thanks, Mom.
Yeah, family and friends. That's important that you reach out to those folks.
Well, let's be clear. It's the people you feel the most comfortable reaching out to, because there's no loss of rejection. Meaning, if they say no, it doesn't affect you, if you will. That first level of people that they ask, it's getting that. And I know you're going to go into this. It's that second and third level, which I'm sure you'll get into.
Yes. So 100%, it's your warm network that you share it with. And then, most kicks. So one of the mistakes that we initially, I say we, it's kind of like I was making the decision. So, Kat, I have to own this one, right? But we set our Kickstarter up for 60 days initially, which was the longest length. And they say right in their recommendations that 30 days is a good length for your Kickstarter, and the shorter is better. Even a 2-week Kickstarter can be a better time frame. I didn't fully understand what we were doing, so I used the full 60 days. So we had, first supporters come on in the first week or two, and then we had like a month where there was just no activity, and I was sharing it and talking about it, but psychologically people were seeing this and they're like, it didn't feel timely, it didn't feel relevant, it was no urgency, nothing was moving, and that was pretty frustrating to watch. So going back to the momentum thing, once you hit 100%, the momentum actually increases, not slows down. And the surprising thing is that is actually where more of those strangers, people that you've never met before, start to show up supporting the Kickstarter. Because once you tip, the visibility and the social proof aspect of other people seeing this, and people are celebrating with you, and it draws other folks in. It's like everyone wants to jump on the winning bandwagon kind of thing. And so we went from, 100% to 131% really easily, whereas getting from 22% to 100%, that was a
effort.
challenge. Yeah. And we'll talk about in a little bit about some of the things that contributed and helped make that happen. So all or nothing tip, and then the momentum carries you forward. You do need to bring your audience. I mean, that's something people should know about Kickstarter. So yes, there is an installed base of people. In fact, we had a few of these folks that showed up that you could just tell who the people who are new to Kickstarter, never supported before, but they're supporting you and your project. They'll come in. And then there are other folks that are just like Kickstarter experts. They're regulars, and they look for cool projects to support. But you can't really count on those folks, and they're the ones who are most likely to show up after you've tipped and you're more visible in the system. So just be prepared to use your email list, your social media, your warm network, your family, your friends. You really need to get the momentum going on your end. Don't expect Kickstarter to do that for you. So one thing we could have done a little bit better, we did this a little bit, but I've done it more so after we hit goal. And that is, Kickstarter, it's kind of like a social network, to be honest. People have profiles and you can share messages and updates. One thing I definitely would do more of in the future is a regular updates, like almost think of it like a blog post or a social media post of what's going on today, what's going on this week, and showing behind the scenes. The more, I think I could have done a better job of, sharing snippets from the book and quotes and, we're explaining where we were at in the editing process going into the final days. I just think that would have engaged. That's how it's meant to be used. Mostly we use that functionality in the last week or so, just telling folks where we're at and thanking them. And then once the Kickstarter closed, we've been informing them of the timeline, because it took a little while for us to coordinate our bulk order of books and then get them to Kat, and then the signing, and I send some bookmarks to her, and so we've been still coordinating all of that to get the delivery of the books out to folks. But all of that is story worthy. It's part of allowing people to jump on that train with you and make the journey with you. Then we're to use the iceberg analogy, we're kind of at the waterline right now. Like when I think about the mechanics of Kickstarter, it was, the all or nothing, like that's the external, like everyone deals with. And also at the waterline, there's what were we doing that was maybe unique to our campaign that really contributed. And one of those things would be the structure of allowing people to support you in a way that feels comfortable for them. So this is also different than how most, like if you've ever sold a coaching program or a service or whatever you do, you probably have a price, maybe you have a payment plan, but you have a couple ways to do that. But really it's one or two things that you're selling. With Kickstarter, we had you could do a book. You could do a $100 book plus the audio book, which we're going to be creating later this year. We had a strategy session with Kat and I where we'd sit down, and we've already done several of these talking about your business and sort of different ways that we can help folks grow. We even had a few higher levels. There was one level, our top level was $7,500. And included workshops and like more of the integrated, we'll come in and work with you in your business on the principles that are in this book. And we'll give you 100 of these books, pre-printed with you writing the forward. Like it was a really cool package. We ended up not getting any supporters at that level because it was a higher price tag, but it made a really interesting conversation. I had several folks that were like on the fence thinking about how could they use this in their business. And I think that was one of the more interesting things we did.
Awesome. Yeah. So like, how did you get inspiration from other pages looking at, doing research in terms of what's worked in the past, or how did you really come up with the bonuses that you included? Because I think that's like, one, your capacity to imagine, right? Of being like, and let's use this in terms of ethical price anchoring, right? Which is, oh shit, there's a $7,500 option. I'm good with the 35, right? And so that wasn't the intent. It was to say, what are all the options that really help us show up in a way? Because individually, both of our VIP days to do the workshops that we're doing, like, was significantly more on both our ends. And so we wanted to create this, we're giving you the kitchen sink kind of thing, because we believe in this book that much. So what did you leverage as inspiration? Because I'm sure other people are going to go, great, but I don't want to just copy what Kat and Tobin are doing if I'm trying to leverage this for my business as well.
Yeah, so I definitely looked at a bunch of other Kickstarters to see how they were graduating their levels, like what were sort of good price points. And what you see in a lot of these, like if they're doing a board game, or they're making a movie project, or they're all creative projects. That's part of the requirement for a Kickstarter. It is a platform for creative projects. They will do T-shirts. They will do additional, if you're making a board game, for example, they might have additional packages that go with a game, like these. You can buy essentially extensions of whatever the core thing is. So I was really curious to see how others were doing it. But our goal in doing the Kickstarter, again, the book was already written, so we didn't need, it was more to give people an opportunity to engage. And I think you guys want to remember that people out there, people buy differently according to what is their their right, the habit that feels comfortable and right for them. So there are some people out there that no matter what price you put in front of them, they are going to buy the lowest price option, because that they just, in their mind, that is how they're programmed to think. They always do that. You'll see this habit and pattern play out throughout their life. There are equally some people that are always going to do the higher priced option because that's just who they are. It's driven by their identity more than by the choices that we make and how we construct
or
it.
even their income level, right? I mean, I know that there were certain people who were multimillionaires and they just wanted to show support. And so they maybe pledged $20 or $15 or 10 just to say, hey, I was here, but didn't necessarily feel called to invest at the higher level. And then again, there's other people who had, quote unquote jobs, right? And who were investing at a much higher level because they felt compelled to do that. So it's not, don't judge a book by its cover, if you will, to allow me the pun, but allow the options there for people to pick and choose what feels right for them. Which, let me asterisk, one of the things that you did was also not make people wrong for not investing money. You also allowed options for people in terms of your reach out to invest as it relates to their time in terms of you leveraging their platform. Can you share this post if that's what's comfortable for you? Because I know plenty of people out there who they just didn't have the resources, and it's okay. And can you hit the share button?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, that part of this attention economy is not just the transactional money that changes hands. So you will find, you will be surprised in how different people show up in different ways. There are folks, I'm not going to mention any specific names. I'm just going to give you a sort of a range that we saw. But I know, as you mentioned, there were supporters in our campaign that have 7-figure businesses. There are also folks that in their businesses are probably earning less right now than they might if they were in a traditional job format. They're getting their businesses started. And folks supported in many different ways. And sometimes we had folks that made pledges to support the campaign because they liked what we were doing. They wanted to support it. Like, they liked the concept of it. They didn't even order a book. So they weren't expecting the book in return. They were supporting the bigger mission. We had other folks, including, for me, a childhood friend and a college roommate, who showed up in a big way. Like, both of them were two of our bigger supporters, which was just an amazing feeling to see them do that, for me, to come in that way for us. But I mean, to see them show up and support in such a big way, it just meant an awful lot. So I think creating that structure and allowing people to, Kat, you and I were on a whole bunch of podcasts. We did interviews with folks live streaming, which was part of that contribution that people could make to help get it out in front of their audiences and let folks, have a conversation, figure out, is this book something that could be of interest and help you in your work.
And let me just call out a little piece there where you did correct yourself, but it actually wasn't wrong what you said initially, which is those childhood friends that college roommates supported you, and then you said, I mean us. And I want to actually stand in that they were supporting you as a person because they believed and wanted to support just Tobin. Irregardless of the book, it's almost like they just wanted to support you as a human being, which came down to the process that you were leveraging. And you mentioned it right off the bat, which is you've got to bring your community. This isn't a community building strategy. It's you're leveraging the community you've already established, your current connections, to, monetize, if you want to look at it in a black and white kind of world, to, have them invest in this, and it almost is, the benefit is that they're investing in something outside of you. So it has this ability to create momentum where other strangers who are wanting to just support other entrepreneurs because they've received support in ways that they hadn't anticipated too. And it is a pay it forward kind of thing. I know that I had a friend who reached out to me and said, hey, I'm trying to make Amazon bestseller. Can you buy my book? And it wasn't a topic that I was interested in at all. Like, it wasn't relevant to me, but because I loved her, because I care for her, I invested. And so when it came time, and this wasn't I'm going to buy yours and I expect you to reciprocate. For me, it was, hey, is this something you could share? And she said, absolutely. And then I think like 20 people bought from one post that she shared because she had done that for other people as well. So she was extending her goodwill that she had received from me as well. And so looking at who are you building these relationships with, which brings us back to the book and the content of it and the framework that we share in Experts Never Chase.
Yeah, and I just want to, as part of the shout out, because most of you guys who are seeing this, I know I put the live stream in a couple public places, so some non-supporters might be seeing this too, and that's okay. You're not in the wrong place, but just understand
Which we
if you
do
want
need to
more
say,
good stuff, you
I
need
don't
to
remember
go
if
to the
you
right
told
place.
them. This
Say
is
again?
coming down, right? Like if you're seeing this in outside of the Experts Never Chase group, this is going to be coming down in the next couple of days. So, take your notes now.
Yeah, and we've been doing a series of these. This is what, number 3 out of the 4, I think. That so there's other bonus material, and it's for folks that are reading the book, wanting to go deeper on the material. We want to support you guys on that. The names of our Kickstarter supporters are memorialized in the book. So that was one of the things that we did as part of the support packages. Yeah, so these folks came in and their name is there of being part of this project. And again, I think it's a kind of cool way to say, you jumped on the train with us. You helped make this thing happen. We would not have, the book was written and was going to come out either way. But to get this bigger momentum, to get in front of more people, to get opportunities to talk about the book on different podcasts, and you will use the funds from the Kickstarter to promote the book and basically keep the train moving forward. That is part of what they are, that they made happen. And so their names are right there with us on the book.
Brilliant. So before we end up being able to, not have any time left, I'd love to hear a little bit more about the 3 kind of levels or learning levels and all that you kind of compilated, my words, for everyone to hear, so that those of you who are out there wanting to leverage this strategy for your book, we're actually wanting to share some more value other than just our lessons learned of what are some steps you can take to create a successful experience for yourself and whatever project you're looking to get funded.
So I think that when this image of the iceberg came to me as I've been processing on all the notes that I was taking and the things that I was learning, the reason why this picture is relevant is that you see the tip of the iceberg, and that is essentially what you see on Kickstarter. You see other people running their projects. You might have even thought about doing one for yourself. There's the mechanics, and at the waterline, that's where we talked about, different pledge levels, what makes the most sense, what goal are you going to go for? Because if you pick a number that's too high, that makes it too hard to reach your goal. You won't tip and you'll lose all, but at the same time, you don't want to go so low that it's not a mission worth supporting either. So picking the right number, that we had to think about that from our perspective, what made sense here. We weren't going for hundreds of thousands of dollars. We were going for a budget to support and bring this book out and get it in front of more people. So the mechanics are at the waterline. And then when you get under the water, I think that's the piece that we haven't really talked about. And one of these, and I'll be honest with you guys, this one was a hard one for me to swallow. So first of all, let me back up for a second. The process that we used is in the book. Like literally, we work the process that's in the book. The book walks you through step by step of how to reach out and how to converse with people, how to talk to them about what you're doing in a way that doesn't send them running and screaming in the opposite direction. We literally used that process to get the Kickstarter funded. But there was one unique way that we did that isn't really talked about in the book. And this is where I was going with it. You have to be willing to be open yourself up and be vulnerable, because that's part of what people buy into in your story. Now, I'm going to say this again in a different way because it sounds like a trite thing, like, oh yeah, of course, I'm real, I'm being authentic. But no, you have to flop on your back and show your soft underside and be not the authority in your space per se. Like you have to swallow your pride a little bit. And for what this looked like for us, and I had this conversation with Kat several months ago when we were sort of in this spot, we were at 22%, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, Kat, I don't think we're going to get fun. We're not going to get there, but this is my plan to do it. This is what I'm thinking about, because I wanted to run it by her, see if she thought this same thing made sense. And it was to reach out to people that I know, my warm network, and one by one say, this is what we're doing. I need your help. I had to make that naked ask of, we're doing this thing and I'm stumbling and we're probably not going to reach our goal if you don't come in and help us get there. And people responded. You will be surprised how important that is, to show that soft underside to other folks and be vulnerable in that way.
Well, and there were people that funded or who pledged who didn't even know. As much as we were marketing and sharing about the book and what we were doing online and in our emails and all, and doing podcasts and interviews, there was a lot of people on that list who didn't know we were writing a book, who didn't know that this was happening. And if we hadn't reached out to those people individually and said, can you help us? Can you help me? They wouldn't have known. I mean, and I think a lot of people were like, and it was really amazing to see how quickly people responded with, oh yeah, sure. Just, and all of this anticipation and expectation of it being difficult actually wasn't. But I think that has a big lesson in terms of how a lot of people approach business as well.
There are multiple marketing lessons, one of them being, we all think because we're sending emails, we're doing social media posts, we're talking about our stuff every day, we think that the world around us must know what we're doing. But the truth is, we're all busy in our own stuff. Mm-hmm. We're just too focused, and that's why this attention is so important. And the world is so noisy that you might as well assume that most of the people don't know what you're doing. And they don't, they haven't engaged at that level. So the direct outreach cut through some of that noise. In a moment, I'll share tactically a couple of things that I did that will be of interest to folks who want to do something like this, and you want to get better results, and you also want to avoid some of the pitfalls. I'll share some examples, some examples on, practical examples on that. But before we do that, Kat, I want to put the ball back in your court, because I think this is a big one. This vulnerable, naked ask, being willing to go to folks, is part of receiving. It's part of this being open. Like we always hear, it's better to give than to receive, right? The thing is, when you give, you're still kind of controlling the process. It's a controlling position. But when you open yourself up to receive, it is vulnerable. There's a whole dynamic that's going on there.
I think a lot of this has to do with the trigger of being too much. So if you're an entrepreneur and you're triggered by being too much, please raise your hand. I'm expecting an entire audience full of hand raisers out there, right? When we have that law that's established in our brain, essentially we back down and we stay focused in the doing. So, again, if you're a high achiever, then, most of the time you have no problem with, if I have a structure, if I have a blueprint, if I have a framework, I can take action. Right now, getting to a place where you actually take the action is a whole different story. But if we've got the blueprint and the steps, then theoretically we are working through it. Now, the hard part is receiving, is just the being, right? It's the, I will do the action and release the how, like all of the woo stuff, if you will. And so really kind of leaning into kind of literally flipping the coin and saying, how can I directly reach out with complete personal intent? Meaning I am selling, but I'm not sleazy selling, right? Meaning I want to receive, and I am just going to unabashedly ask for it. Right. And I'm going to leverage my reputation, and I'm going to leverage my connections to ask for the thing that I want. Right. And not in a way that's, it's not like we're reaching out to people who had no interest or who wouldn't benefit from this product or this service, but really looking at that. And so when we can step into that empowered space of this is something that's good for other people. This is something that I truly desire. Really it kind of, you're stepping into a claiming energy, which is I am willing to receive this and I'm willing to do the actions in order to receive it, and not necessarily attached to how it comes into fruition. Meaning I'm not focused so much that Tobin must be the one who fully funds this at $10,000, right? But I'm willing to continue to ask until I receive fully.
I think this is one of the things, because I've been in your program, Kat, so I know this is one of the things you do really well, in that you see that transformational, that turning point for folks in their own revenue when you do this work with them around receiving. So that's why I wanted to, this was a lesson that I was learning externally through this experience of trying to help, move the Kickstarter forward, but I know this is right in your sweet spot.
Appreciate that. So what were some of the other components? So, I mean,
I want to throw up on the screen. So Diana said, because we were talking about the outreach process, she said she knew the book was in process. She knows you, she knows myself. She knew we were writing and working on the book, but she said that personal invitation to be part of it was so important to her. Like, this is what, grabbed her attention, grabbed her heart, and Diana came in a big way and supported us when we needed it. And I want to do a shout out to her, has continued to support the book. It was really through Diana's guidance and support. If you guys don't know her, you definitely want to follow her. Yes, you need to. But Diana was instrumental in us ending up reaching #1 status on 4 different lists, I think it was.
International, actually, also.
Yeah, so she's really good at what she does.
International bestseller.
Yeah.
In 4 different categories. And that's the thing, is that's also, I think, what I didn't share was your ability to receive allows other people to give. So when we, and we've all experienced this, when we want to help someone and they don't listen, or they don't want to take it, or they just kind of, turn their nose up at you, it doesn't feel good when you're a giver. And so imagine when you're a giver, you're not allowing other people to give to you. You are making other people feel that way, which is what continues to create lack instead of creating the abundance. And Diana went above and beyond, and it was uncomfortable sometimes. And I was like, we got to do something. Like, we can't just, and she was just willingly giving because she believed in the book and believed in the process so much that now our way of giving back is by promoting and calling her and sharing, someone who really knows what they're doing, who's willing to go above and beyond for her clients, and is really committed to the outcome. And those people are few and far between.
Yeah, and I would just add in because some folks out there may not know Diana Needham and or why they. So she will help shepherd your book from start to finish writing the book. So our book was written, and where she stepped in with us was she'll also carry it all the way through the promotion into the best-selling list.
Which is not an easy thing to navigate. Yeah. You think you know, but you don't know. Yeah. But Diana does. It's good to know the people who do know. Because it can save a lot of heartache and stress and have it happen. I mean, I remember, and not that she does this for everyone, but getting texts at 11 o'clock at night, at least it was my time zone, and being like, we're almost there. We're just probably one more email and it should do it. And it did. And it just, her unabashed belief in us just really carried us through when we weren't sure if we were going to be able to make the #1 bestseller. I mean, we knew we had the quality in the book, but having other people recognize that sometimes and so quickly isn't always something. And so that was another exercise in receiving, not only in terms of getting to bestseller, but in receiving, again, releasing we don't know how it's going to happen. We're just going to take the action to help support it.
Yeah, I mean, it was a team effort. Obviously 2 authors part of the team, but many folks that have pitched in different ways, from sharing their expertise, sharing their dollars, ordering books, sometimes, even more going into higher levels of the support that helped make this happen. There was one last thing that I wanted to share. So this, I'm still thinking about the under the water, big, sizable. Yeah, that's right. The bottom portion of the iceberg here.
Oh,
and that is I think it's the power of awe. So I've been reading lately about the science of awe. Awe is that experience when, like, sometimes we get it in nature. Sometimes it's when a piece of music will just carry you away. You get emotional around art or reading a book or a movie or something like that. Sometimes it's just watching kindness of one human being to another. But those moments of awe allow and encourage people to be part of something bigger than themselves. And I think that was one of the things that for weeks I've just been thinking about the Kickstarter and what was going on here, because there was something different about this. And this is not something that you see in a normal just marketing campaign. A book launch, we've got a book coming out, does not do this same thing. But the awe came from watching the barn being raised by a whole bunch of people. It wasn't Kickstarter itself that was the awe. It was the experience of people coming together. It was so they've done this study. They did this study at Berkeley around awe, and so they put a bunch of people out in a park on the campus near one of the buildings, and there were these 100-year-old eucalyptus trees. Just a beautiful spot in nature where people were able to sit, for 30 minutes and just sort of look at the trees and ponder. And then, because it was a science experiment, this was done intentionally, someone would walk through the space and trip and spill a box of pens all over the ground. And the people who were sitting in nature and experiencing awe, and again, it's not just nature that does this, but when you have and are experiencing awe, the people who witnessed that picked up twice as many pens to be helpful to the other person as someone who was just sort of wrapped up in their day and, not. So it's part of our human nature. It's part of our heart that we all want to get ahead, but we also want to get along. It's like there's a creative tension between the two. And so I think that was what was most interesting to me. And honestly, it's the opportunity for you. If you're watching this because you're thinking about, well, I might want to do a Kickstarter, this is what's in front of you, is to create that tension of getting ahead, which is your goals that you're setting, the reason why you'd want to do a Kickstarter, what would it actually do for you, and the creative tension of how do you also get along with others and create that opportunity for them to be part of something bigger.
Absolutely. So with the Naked Ask and the Power of Awe, is there anything else that you'd add in terms and related to kind of that underwater outreach, kind of really funding things? Like, are there any other lessons learned really that you really hope that people would keep in mind as they're progressing through this?
Lessons. I think what I'll do, or we will do in the future, more Kickstarters. I think it's an interesting mechanism, an interesting space. This was 100% organic. There was no paid, traffic or, paid campaigns. That is something that some Kickstarters will do to help get things funded. Again, it's all about momentum. So once you get the momentum going, the snowball's rolling down the hill, it starts to grow from there. I promised I would tell you one mechanical, like tactical thing that some of the nerds out there are going to be interested in this one. So for example, when I decided to make my vulnerable naked ask and just go to people and say, hey, I need your help, one of the first things I did, and this is in the book, this is something that we talk with you about, we sort of share the steps in the book. I made a list of the people that I thought I felt like I had built rapport with and that I could comfortably reach out to and say, I need this from them. I wasn't doing this with strangers.
Right.
These were folks that I felt like I had contributed to them in some shape or form over the years. I had that relationship that I could reach out and ask for help. I think my list ended up being 70, 80, 90 names. When I was just sort of brainstorming, I'm sure that wasn't the complete list, but that's what it was. I never reached the end of that list. By the time we got to half of the list, like 40 people that I had reached out, we were almost at goal. And one of the things that I was doing, because if you, for example, if you're a Facebook user and you go and send 40 messages to people today,
yeah,
Facebook is going to lock you down. Like They look at that pattern of behavior as something that people who are being obnoxiously spammy, we call them leg humpers, that's what they do when they send message after message after message, particularly if the messages look very similar. But we had a short timeline to get a lot of messages out. So what I was doing, and what you guys may be interested in knowing, is you can work with voicemails. It's more personal. It's clearly personalized. Someone has to listen to the message. So the message comes in and they don't just glance at it when they're busy doing something else. They have to take the time. By the way, do not do this and send voicemail. Like if you
don't use a strategy to be sleazy.
that is not going to work for you, because that's annoying but these were short. These were not minute long voicemails. These were short, to the point. Like, I wrote up a couple notes of what I wanted to say, and it basically said, hey, I'm doing a project. I don't know if you've seen this. It's a Kickstarter, and it's all or nothing. I need your help. And it was just the details of why I was reaching out. And it told them enough so that they knew what I needed from them. And then usually I would have a dialogue with folks and say, show me, tell me more. They had questions about what I was doing. But I did this on LinkedIn, and I did this through Facebook as well. The voicemails give you a little bit more wiggle room to get out a bunch of messages. So on LinkedIn, it's right now it's 100 outreach, 100 connections that you can do in a week. They just lowered the limit because people were abusing this. So you're not limited on your messages unless you're on one of the free plans. I guess you'd be limited there. But my point is, you have a little bit more leeway when you're more personalized in your communication. And voicemails are actually a great way for people to hear you and feel that energy, that genuine energy around, how are you reaching out to them? How are you showing up to make that ask and give them that opportunity to participate with you? So I thought that was kind of an interesting thing, that just mechanically that people might not realize that you could do it that way. It wasn't a copy and paste message. It was unique to each person who received one.
Yep. Beautiful. I mean, I think that we hit the major points here in terms of, the looking at what's the structure of the Kickstarter, how are you presenting it, what are the ways to bonus in extra things to make it appealing to people, looking at a little bit of the mechanics of, what was the outreach looking like who were the people that you were reaching out to, some strategies around that, which you just shared there specifically, and then looking at the under the water aspect of things, of looking at really the big chunk of everything is the outreach, because you can set everything up, but it's not a build it and they will come situation, right? You got to get out into the field and invite people into the stadium so they can watch the game. They're done with sports analogies. That's the extent of it. So really looking at, where you shared about the naked ask and, the power of awe, and what were the things that really compelled people to contribute and participate. Tobin, anything else that you wish you'd done differently, or that you would anticipate leveraging in the future?
I think just pertinent to today is everything from the waterline up that we talked about it was a lot of technology. Like, how do you structure the technology? Deadlines, like how many days should you run your Kickstarter? Under the water was mostly psychology. And to me, that's way more interesting because it's timeless. The technology is going to change. Kickstarter today, who knows what tomorrow, right? But the psychology of how people interact and how they've been showing up to do old-fashioned barn raisings for hundreds and hundreds of years, that's really interesting. And we've all experienced this in this past year of maybe feeling a little bit isolated and not part of something bigger because we were in lockdown and we had, kids schooling from home and just, things were different. And so this was an opportunity to explore that space, again, getting along and getting ahead, getting ahead in a way that we could do it all together.
Beautiful.
Cool. If you guys have questions, again, for example, Jaylay asked a question. I'll just give her a little shout out here as we wrap up today. She was talking about, she's going through the book. She's been making her list for outreach. She has her offer, but she's realizing as she's sort of assessing and thinking about the conversational outreach, maybe even some of her first experiences with the outreach. Sometimes you might not be confident in what you put together for your offer. There is a process that's actually an appendix in the book where we talk about reverse gear and sort of how can you go out and have those conversations with people about the work that you want to do, the service you want to provide, the program you're thinking about putting together. You may already have the program, but if you go in with the agenda of trying to sell something that's already done, it may not be what the person wants to buy. So there's a really, I think, elegant process to have conversations with people about what they want to buy. And in many cases, if you'll listen deeply and actively, you can walk away with something far more valuable than what you were originally intended.
Perfect. And I think if we haven't underlined it enough, which is we actually use the process in the book, again, to be able to fully fund Kickstarter. It's how we fully fund our businesses, if you will, as well. And so this is one of the great things about this is that it is, though we talk and leverage and reference LinkedIn a lot in the book, it is something that can be leveraged across platforms. It's a strategy and technique that has been working since the beginning of time. And will continue to work because it's focused on building relationships and valuing individual people over just the transaction that a lot of people are focused on. So with that, if you have bought the book and you'd like to be in the book club to be able to ask some of those clarifying questions, or if you're wanting to check out everything, I would say go check out expertsneverchase.com where you can learn a little bit more about the book. Some of them, we have extra bonuses on there that you can go ahead and grab now. And really look forward to more of you joining us in the book club, if you will.
Yeah, sounds good. We have one more of these in a couple of weeks. We're going to take some time off for the 4th of July holiday here in the US, but then we're going to come back and do part 2 of book discussion. So get your questions ready and we'll be going deep on that in another couple of weeks. Great. Thanks for taking the time today, Kat.
Thank you.